All right, aloha, folks. Want to start this month's leadership seminar series, sponsored by the Ken and Donna Hayashida Ohana and Kai Hawaii. So always appreciative of their support for our leadership programs here at the College of Engineering. I'm Brennan Morial, your Dean of the College of Engineering. And every month, we're always very fortunate to have someone in our community, one of our leaders, join us and share some of their stories about their own history, their own journeys and path, and share that with both our students, our graduates, as well as our industry friends and partners who are out there. And I know I already see a lot of Hawaiian Electric people online, so we'll make sure that we get your list to Shelee so that she knows who participated and who didn't. So, but this month is no exception, and it's I'm super excited about Shelee Kimura joining us here. She's the president and CEO of Hawaiian Electric Company. A very dear friend. I worked with her for a number of years, both while I was at Hawaiian Electric and then also before in other previous lives when I had to work with Hawaiian Electric. And you know, like how Hawaii is, my wife actually knew Shelee and her husband Stan far longer than I did, because they're all graduates of Aiea High School back in the day. I won't date them, but
thank you.
yeah. But Shelee is one of my favorite people in the world. So hopefully you will see why today as she shares. And I'm going to turn it over to Ellie and Josh to kick us off. So thank you.
My name is Ellie, and with me today is Josh. So we'd like to welcome everyone to our leadership seminar series of October, presented by the Hayashida family. So our presenter today is Shelee Kimura, and Josh will start off by introducing her.
Shelee Kimura is a serving 95% of Hawaii's population across Oahu, Maui, Hawaii, Lanai, and Molokai. She became CEO in January 2022 after roles as Senior Vice President, Customer Service and Public Affairs, and Business Development and Strategic Planning. During her leadership, she strengthened customer care, improved access and equity, and led Hawaiian Electric's 2015 to 2020 strategic transformation plan, driving clean energy growth and launching the electric transportation division. Before joining Hawaiian Electric, Shelee was involved in investor relations and strategic planning at Hawaiian Electric Industries and held roles at Arthur, Henderson, and KMH LLP. She has been recognized with several awards, including the YWCA Honolulu Leader Luncheon Award, the University of Hawaii Shadler College of Business Hall of Honor, and received the 2016 Clean Energy Education and Empowerment Business Award by the U.S. Department of Energy in collaboration with the Stanford Freeport Institute for Energy and the MIT Energy Initiative, among many other awards. Shelee holds a BBA from the University of Hawaii Manoa and executive education degree from Wharton. She serves on multiple boards, including Alexander and Baldwin, Mid-Pacific Institute, Nakamokai, Parents and Children Together, and is an Olivia Fellow and U.S. Clean Energy Education and Empowerment Ambassador and Empowerment Women. She and her husband are proud parents of 3 children. Now we'll have Shelee begin with any opening remarks she would like to do.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thanks for coming today. And I think that's funny to hear there's a lot of Hawaiian Electric people calling in, which, you know, we could have done that at work, but that's good. I really appreciate the support, everybody. You know, I really thought about talking to students who are like my son's age. So my son is now 22. He's in college as well. He's studying oceanic and atmospheric sciences and then minoring in mechanical engineering. And, you know, today is really, well, I'll be talking about my journey, and Josh has said that that's the topic, to talk about my journey, about how I got to where I am. It's really about you and what you're going to take from that. And you guys are going to be embarking on your journey, and you've already started your leadership journey, whether you know that or not, and you will continue it as you start your career. Your skills as engineers are critically important. There's so many challenges in Hawaii and in society in general that need to be solved, and your skills are going to be critically important to do that in Hawaii and elsewhere. And these are things like infrastructure, climate, economy, solutions that are going to help our economy in Hawaii. And when you pair those skills and those talents with your leadership skills, you can make even greater impact. And your work can have greater impact. So I think it's really great that the College of Engineering is having this leadership series for all of you. And I want to thank UH and the College of Engineering for developing such great students coming out of UH that many eventually become our employees. And that's a really great partnership that we have, and I appreciate it. So just some thoughts. You'll hear me talk about my journey, but when I think about what's most important for you right now, I think about some of the things I might tell my kids at this point in their journey. So things to keep in mind as you start your career. The first one is make sure you're paying attention, like as you go through all of your experiences, as you go through school, as you go through your first years of working, pay attention to what drives you, what fulfills you, what drains you. Figure out what your passions are, what you think your purpose is, and that'll continue to evolve as you go through your career and you have different experiences. But that's really important to figure out what choices you want to make. When you figure out what your purpose is, and again, that can change over time, but it helps you make decisions throughout your career. It helps you make the tough decisions if you have a job offer, or if you're thinking about moving away or staying home. If you have a difficult decision to make at work, it kind of serves as your North Star. I had to go through a leadership program about how many years ago now? Like 12 years ago now? Not had to, I was fortunate to go through a leadership program at Wharton, and I was there for a summer. And one of the things that they asked us to do was to define our leadership purpose. And there was a whole process to do that. For me, what I defined as my leadership purpose was to create a better future for Hawaii so my kids could cherish Hawaii as I do today. And that has really helped me in so many difficult decisions that I've had to make. And it really brings my thinking up to the level of Hawaii, not myself, not my company, but what is best for Hawaii. And that has always helped me decide things in a much more focused way, rather than kind of flailing through a decision-making process. And I think as you folks go through all of your experiences, continue to pay attention to that. The other thing is that one of your most valuable assets is trust that other people will have in you and your reputation. It takes years and years to build trust and a reputation and your credibility. And that's going to stay with you your entire career. You're already building it, whether you know it or not. So when I was at UH, I was very focused on academics. I had to have a certain GPA to keep my scholarship. So I was making sure I got good grades. But I was also very focused on the social aspect of college. And while I didn't realize it at the time, I was networking. And those relationships have played out in various ways throughout my career. And if you treat people well, and they think that you're a good person, and if they feel like you're doing things for the right intentions, that stays with you throughout your life. And when you have to be in really tough situations, like I have had to be in, people are going to be there to help support you, to help you figure things out, to help navigate through the difficult times. And I've been very fortunate with that. So how do you build trust? It's focus on your integrity always. Always think about that as you're going through your career and your life. Treat people with respect and see the value in people. People understand and remember how they feel when they're with you. And so when you're treating people with respect and they feel valued and feel seen, they feel that and they understand that. Be candid. Sometimes in Hawaii, it's difficult to be candid and we like to avoid conflict. But someone taught me how did they say it? Candor with kindness. And I always carried that with me because it actually is kind to be candid, to have open conversations with people, not attacking people, but making sure we're talking about what the issues are so that we can solve problems. And again, going back to what the bigger goal is to create a better future for Hawaii. If that's both of our goals and we will both buy in, like that is what we're trying to achieve, then it's much easier to have those conversations about what the conflict is that we're trying to figure out. Put the work in. So I have worked a lot in my career. And people talk about work-life balance, and it's not always easy. I stopped talking about work-life balance because I feel like it's all life. It's not work or life, it's all life and how you integrate your life. And for the greater purpose of what you're trying to achieve. So I try to integrate everything in my life. It involves a lot of work, but it also involves having my children understand and my family understand the work that I'm doing. And so when I look at my kids, they're doing things that actually relate to the work that I'm doing, whether I intended that or not. That's what they ended up doing. So my son is in environmental sciences, basically. My daughter is studying international relations and environmental policy, and they really have a passion for that. Let's see, what was I saying? Do the work. So the other part of doing the work is being proud of the work you deliver, making sure that you're focusing on doing a really good job so that when you deliver something, you can be proud of it. Especially when you're starting out in your career, because again, you are establishing your credibility, you're establishing your reputation as a professional, and people are going to see that. They're going to make conclusions about your potential and your future and what opportunities they're going to give you. And if you do a good job, they're going to continue to give you more and more opportunities. Sometimes people may view that as getting a lot of extra work, but you're also getting a lot of extra experience. And you're building up all of those experiences that will then make you a better professional, a better engineer, a better leader into the future. How many people like Lego? Yeah. So when my son was young, we would always play Lego. I have 3 kids, by the way, but talking about my oldest one, my son. So we would play Lego all the time because he loved Lego. And when I think about my leadership journey, I think about Lego because as you go through all of your experiences and the people you meet and what you learn from them, like collecting all these Lego pieces along the way. And as you collect more and more Lego pieces, you can build more things. And as your circumstances change and your situation changes, you can move those pieces around, but you still have all those pieces at your disposal. So when an opportunity comes up for a new experience, take it on. When that door opens, walk through it. Just collect all of those experiences so that you can figure out what it is that drives you, what it is that drains you, and then get the experience that is offered through that work or whatever it may be. What else was I going to talk about? Let's see. Do the work, reputation. So when you're working with people, throughout my career, I've worked with a lot of different people and I've always learned something from each one of them. So again, it's just paying attention to what's happening and gaining what you can from the leaders you work with. You're going to see some things that you really like. You're going to see some things that you're saying, that doesn't really fit well for me, and I'm not going to do that. And sometimes it's like trying things on, especially when you're young. if you like to go shopping and, try things on and you're like, that's not really me, or you try something else on, you're like, that's a really good fit, that's my look. That's kind of like leadership. You'll see people they'll have different styles of leadership. They'll approach things different ways. And when you're young, you have the ability to try out different things, see what works for you. You want to make sure that you're being authentic in your leadership. And when you're young, sometimes it's hard to figure out what that is. And so as you try different things on, you can see what fits best with you and your values, and your style and your background. So always being authentic is really important. That's part of the trust building. It's part of that credibility. And embracing your own background, your own unique experiences, that's also critically important. So I grew up, one of the questions that was asked was about my upbringing. So I grew up in Aiea. I'm fourth and fifth generation Chinese, Okinawan, Portuguese, and Spanish. So all immigrants, right? Back in the plantation days. And I went to public school. I went to Aiea High School, graduated from Aiea High School. Today, we talk about ALICE families, which is asset limited, income constrained, but employed. So I would say we were like a ALICE family for much of me growing up, living paycheck to paycheck. And I think I always felt like I was at a disadvantage because I went to public school. And that was something I had to get over throughout my career. But I realized that it was actually a strength that I had. How many people went to public school here? Okay. And so my dad always thought it was super important for me to go to public school because, well, he went to public school. He had two older siblings who went to private school, and he and his younger brother went to public. Oh, no, wait, let me think about that. Oh, no, he was the only one that went to public school. And he thought it was really important for his kids to go to public school because he felt like that gave you the opportunity to make sure you understood and appreciated all walks of life, and that it forced you to have grit and resilience, and you had to put the work in to get the value out. And he never wanted us to just have something served up to us. He always wanted us to have to work for it. And he was an athlete. So he would always say, no pain, no gain. Like that was one of the things he would say. So when I say put the work in, that's what I hear in my head. But through those experiences, today, when I think about how I apply it and going to public school, I'm able to feel very comfortable in community, whether it's, on wherever, on the west side, Waimanalo, in Lahaina, or in Kahala, or in New York City on Wall Street. And being able to just see people and appreciate them, I think that goes a long way. And when I face adversity, I just work right through it. It doesn't, of course it affects me, but it doesn't set me back. I'm just looking for the path to get through it. Your value comes from when you look at what you're good at and what's unique about you. And so when I talk about being authentic, think about what makes you unique. And you may not really realize what makes you unique yet. But as you go through your career, again, pay attention to that. Pay attention to what makes you unique, what experiences make you unique. Another question I saw on the list was talk about your hula background, because you folks understand that hula was a big part of my life. So that is something that I think is not unique in Hawaii. Lots of people dance hula. But I think maybe in my role, for someone in my role, that's unique. And I grew up dancing hula. I started at 3 or 4 years old, and it was my life all the way through college and a little bit to my career as well. it was one of the reasons why I wanted to be at home and go to school here. I really wanted to go to Mary Monarch. And I grew up competing in hula, and I happened to be part of a halau that would win at that Kiki hula competition every year. So it taught me to work hard. It taught me to work as a team. It taught me when to lead, when to follow. It also taught me about the interconnection of all things. That people and Aina and ocean are all interconnected and we're all dependent on each other. Through hula, I had the opportunity to go to Kaho'olawe when I was in high school. And so I started going to Kaho'olawe, and it was through the Protect Kaho'olawe Ohana, and they're all about Aloha Aina. And so I learned about that. I experienced it through those trips. And I used to proudly wear my Protect Kaho'olawe Ohana Stop the Bombing shirt around campus. And so there's a little bit of activism in my history. But then when you fast forward to today, the role I have now is I have a really strong partnership with the military. We work with all branches of the military. I appreciate the work they do for national security. And they're critically important partners for us as we focus on cybersecurity and physical security of the grid. And I've gotten to know some of the leaders in the Department of Defense as well. And I know that their mission and their passion is to protect. My mission and passion is also to protect Hawaii, to make sure that we create that better future for our children. And so I'm able to bridge between the mission and values of the military and the mission and values of some of Hawaii's communities where there's conflict. And so recently I was able to work through both sides along with other people to find a potential path forward for Hawaii community and the Department of Defense to work better together and to potentially reset the relationship going forward. That's just an example of things that are unique about my background, and then how you apply it and create value out of that and create impact out of that. Okay, so I've already touched a little bit on my background. And how's my time? Let me bring out my phone so I can keep track of my time.
Yeah.
Okay, so like 5 more minutes? How much longer you want me to, before Q&A? Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so another thing that really impacted me and my path, and why I talk about paying attention to what matters to you, is that when I was coming into UH, you have to do your physical exam. You guys all did that, right? Before you came into UH, you have to go to the doctor, do your whole physical exam, get blood work and all of that. So when I did that, the doctors found something that made them think I had an autoimmune disease. And so that caused me to have to go get blood tests every 3 months, and they were monitoring this. And my dad's sister had passed away at 36 from this disease. And so for about 7 years of my life, I was going through all these blood tests all the time, and they were monitoring for this. And so I went through a lot of self-reflection, because you don't know, as you're going through that, you don't know if you potentially could have a shorter life. And so it really made me think about what is my purpose on earth, right? Whether it's short or whether it's long, what is the meaning of me being here and what is my purpose here? And I had a friend once, and this was in college, and she said, we're not put on this earth to make lots of money. We're put on this earth to make a difference, and you have to figure out what that is. And so that was a lot of the work I did for myself, just because I was going through that. But in the end, again, I talk about what makes you unique. That actually fell really deep inside of me. And so when I talk about purpose, it's pretty deep in me. And when I talk about creating a better future for my children and the generations to come, that's pretty deep in me. And through dancing hula, you really have this generational perspective and your responsibility or your kuleana to generations past, present, and future. So you think about things in a much longer timeline and what your impact is today on what will happen in the future. So that also affected how I thought about career and schooling and friends and all of those things. At the same time, I had the reality of I needed to support myself financially. I needed to be financially independent when I got out of school, and I knew that. So I didn't know what I wanted to do. I don't know how many of you feel super sure about what you want to do in terms of your major or your career. I had no idea. I was interested in lots of different things, but I chose the practical path. I majored in accounting, and I knew that at UH, the big 5 accounting firms, at the time it was big 5 international accounting firms, they recruited right out of UH. You'd have a job coming out, a pretty good job coming out, you get your CPA license, and then it gave you a really good foundation for business to then figure out what else you wanted to do. So that's what I did. I interviewed with all the big 5. I was fortunate enough to get offers from all of them. And I chose the firm that had the greatest focus on its people and the development of its people. And they focused on training, they focused on mentorship, and nationally and internationally, I viewed them as the best firm. Everybody would have their own opinion, but I viewed them as the best firm. So I chose that firm. And I think some of you may have heard from Eric Yeaman in the past. Was he a speaker? Yeah. So Eric Yeaman was at Arthur Andersen. He became my mentor at Arthur Andersen, and he's been my mentor ever since. He ended up going to Kamehameha Schools and becoming the CFO. I left public accounting for a little while because I realized that it wasn't really what I wanted to do. It didn't have the meaning I was looking for that I've been talking about. So I went and I worked for one of my
I was in
nonprofit
another
clients.
room
And I did
Let
that
me-
for, I think, a little less than a year
uh,
before my mentor asked me to come back to Arthur Andersen and work full-time on an engagement that they got at Kamehameha
Let's
Schools.
see how I
And
can.
this was right after Broken Trust. It was right after all the trustees got removed and replaced. And Kamehameha Schools was resetting, basically. So it was a very impactful and meaningful time
Yeah,
to
okay,
be
now.
there.
Yeah,
And
go ahead.
it had, for me, it had a lot of meaning. And so that was something I was really excited about doing and felt like it was meaningful work. So I did that 4 years, full-time for 4 years, got a lot of great experience. Because it was such a big client, Arthur Andersen sent their best partners for the topics that we were focusing on. So whether it was real estate or investments or
They wouldn't
policy,
allow it if
strategy,
no other loan.
or IRS compliance, they would come to Hawaii and work with us. And then I had the ability to work with
Yeah.
those. Again, people and experience and just gaining all you can from being exposed to
Oh.
that. The other thing I was exposed to was being in the boardroom with the board of trustees. Because of our role, we had the opportunity to be in the room. I think it was like every other week. And you could hear the discussion and you could hear the kinds of issues that they were grappling with and how they would make decisions. And that kind of observation of that, the governance that they went through was super helpful for me as I went through the rest of my career, because I could see the work that I was doing and how it would ultimately end
Okay,
up.
yeah, it can be
boardroom
done.
and
If
affect
it
the
cannot be
decisions that
done,
they were
it
having
cannot
to
be
make.
done.
So as you go through
I
your
don't
work
think Bank of America
and
would
your
give
early
enough
career,
loan, because I
always
think they
think
want
about
they
how
want
the work
us
you're
to get
doing
rid of
affects the
because
level right
loan
above
is
you.
too.
So how does that
And
affect your
Lance, can you
boss?
at least
What is
mute
your
your mic?
boss's
For
job?
us.
And
Yeah, so if
put
they-
yourself in their position so that you can test yourself to say, well, if I was in their position, what decision would I make? if I was in their position, what kind of analysis would I think I needed to make a good decision? And that helps you develop, it helps your thinking, it helps your critical thinking, it helps your problem solving without the risk of making a wrong decision because your boss is still gonna review it, right? So use it as a development opportunity to push yourself to learn. One of the partners that I worked with at Arthur Andersen, the thing that he would tell us is think straight, talk straight. And so basically don't get caught up in all the noise. Try to lift yourself out of the situation and see it from the 20,000 foot level so that you don't get caught up in the emotion, the noise, try and be more clinical about it so that you can make a more objective assessment of the situation and a more objective recommendation on how it should be addressed. That was another big thing I learned from him. While I was at Kamehameha Schools, I also had the opportunity to work with Nainoa Thompson. He was the chair of the board of trustees at that time. And I got to know him and he became a friend and a mentor. And one of the things that I learned from him was the importance of vision and knowing where your destination is. And also the importance of having a purpose and inspiring others to move in the same direction. He didn't always have all the answers. When he decided he was going to go around the world, he didn't have all the answers, but he created a vision and an inspiration for people to rally around, and people rallied. And all the pieces start to come together based on the vision that he puts forward. And he is also continues to be a mentor today and a friend today. So when Eric moved to HEI, Eric, my mentor, moved to HEI, he asked me to apply for a job there. And again, this goes back to make sure you work hard, make sure that you demonstrate good work ethic, and people will want you to be a part of their team. And so he asked me to move over. And I had never worked for a public company before, a publicly traded company before. And when you're doing finance, that's a really big deal. So I didn't have the experience at all. But as I gave the advice to you guys, I just walked through that door and I said, okay, we're going to figure this out. But he also knew I didn't have experience. And I just dove right in and I tried to figure it out. And it's about continuously learning. It's about putting in the time, being curious, asking lots of questions, especially when you're starting your career, especially when you're starting a new job. Don't be afraid to ask questions because that's how you learn. I've made mistakes while I was going through it, but every one of those mistakes, I learned from it and it made me a better professional. It made me a better person. I was able to do work that, because we don't have that many publicly traded companies in Hawaii, I was able to do work that not many people got to do. So again, that created that unique skill set that I had. I issued debt in the public markets. I issued equity in the public markets. I met with credit rating agencies in New York on Wall Street. I met with investors on Wall Street, investment bankers. And I gained a lot of experience from just having those meetings and learning from them and the kinds of questions they asked and what they cared about. So again, I got to connect the dots between the work I was doing and the things that people who were investing in our company cared about. So I could connect the value again. So connecting the value from what I do to investors, what I do to the boardroom. And so the next step later in my career was to connect it with our customers. So I eventually moved to Hawaiian Electric Company. I did a number of things, but I eventually made my way to customer service, vice president for customer service. And that was a whole new experience for me. I had been really focused on strategy, financial things, business model, innovation, those types of things. And then when the CEO at the time, Alan Oshima, said, hey, we want you to switch jobs with this other vice president. We want you to do customer service. I literally pushed back from the table. I said, are you kidding me, Alan? Are you sure you want want to do that? And he's like, yeah, we're gonna do it. So again, I just walked through that door, I figured it out. I went around and I met with all of the different departments in customer service. I did ride-alongs so I could learn from them. I did meter reading. I wasn't very good at it. I went with someone to disconnect customers who weren't paying. Some of these jobs are very dangerous, but I got to experience that in the seats, kind of being next to the people who actually do the work, so I could build that understanding and empathy, and I could then better lead once I understood what it was about. And then I was just fortunate that people took a chance on me. So I got to Hawaiian Electric Company because another vice president said, hey, we want you to move from the holding company at HEI to Hawaiian Electric Company. I was gonna move from leading 8 people to 80 people and leading a lot of engineers. I knew nothing about engineering at the time. And again, that was a big leap for me, but I was lucky that I had someone who was gonna take a chance on me and support me going through that transition. Again, I made lots of mistakes, but I learned from them. And those mistakes and what people would consider failures are treasures that you take in as you go through your career, because it helps you become better at whatever you do. So while I was doing customer service, I don't remember the exact timing, but our company started looking at succession planning for the CEO roles in our company. And there are a number of us that they said, okay, we just want to make sure all of you start getting ready so that if the time comes and if you get called, you're ready to step into the position. And I remember saying, you know, that's not for me. Again, that view of myself of this public school kid from Aiea who, you know, never imagined I'd even be an executive role at Hawaiian Electric. They're now saying, get ready to be CEO in case you get called. I couldn't even fathom that when they first started talking to me about it. And I had this executive coach who said, you need to get over that. He basically told me, you need to get over that. He said, that is however long ago it was. That's 20, 30 years ago. I guess 20 years. That's 20 years ago. You've had so much experience since then. You've accomplished a lot. You've, you know, done all these things. You need to just let go of that. You're being called and you have a responsibility to step up because people are depending on you. So when I thought about it that way, it was a whole different mindset. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about how was I going to serve? And if I'm needed, then I need to make sure I'm ready so I can serve in the best way I can as CEO. And so that became my mindset as our company went through that process. I'm lucky to work with a really good team. So I obviously became CEO eventually, and that was in 2022. I work with a really great team, and one of the lessons of leadership is get really smart and good people around you. The other is that culture is super important. You may have heard this before, and people think it's cliche, but I really believe it. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. So you can have the best strategy in the world, but if you don't have a good culture, then nothing's going to get done. And culture is really dependent on leadership because it has to come from the top. People have to see it. You have to live it. Otherwise, it's not real and people don't buy into it. And then it has to just start to permeate the company. And once people understand what you stand for, what your values are, and what it is as a company we're trying to achieve. And for us is to create a sustainable and resilient future for our children and grandchildren so Hawaii can thrive. Everybody is striving for that. And so the daily decisions we make ultimately go to that level to make sure that that's where we're headed. The wildfires happened last year. very difficult time for our company, for Lahaina, for Maui. And I think the leadership fundamentals in that situation are the same. It's focusing on values, on purpose, caring about people, that's that trust part of it. And bringing people together both inside and outside the company to achieve something greater than just the company's objectives. And so when we were in the situation the day after the fires, and the days following the fires, I made sure that we were all focused on our values, and I made sure our company knew that we were gonna stick to our values no matter what, and we're gonna do the right thing. We didn't know exactly what was happening yet, nobody did. But I assured everybody, no matter what happened, we're gonna do the right thing. We can't control what already happened, but we can control what we do going forward. And the best way that we can honor those that were lost and the things that were lost is to make sure that we do our part to ensure it never happens again. And so we've been very focused on that. Over the last year, we've made significant progress. We've made significant investment in that. And we have a couple of interns here who did some of that work, which is really important work. And I thank you guys for being a part of that. And I'm just really proud of our team on how they've carried themselves through this, and really focused on what's most important, and that's serving our community. And now, we're focused on ensuring that we continue to be there for Lahaina, because it's going to be a long road, and ensuring that we emerge from this as a viable company and that we can continue to serve Hawaii into the long term. And it takes grit, it takes resilience, and it's going to take all the unique skill sets of our people, and vision for the future. So all the things that we touched on today, it matters from the very start of your career to, the latter part of your career as well. So happy to take any questions you guys may have.
Thank you, Shelee. So now we're gonna go into our Q&A portion. So if you guys have questions, you guys can just raise your hand. And then if you're on Zoom, just type it in the chat.
I'll start off with the first question. I watched your interview video when you won the Outstanding Mother Award in 2022.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, you kind of talked about, just like you're saying, creating a safe place for your kids. So they always come back to, so they can take risks and create an impact.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could just elaborate more on your perspective on risk taking, why it's important, and maybe some of the risks or bigger risks you took in your career as well, and how it panned out.
Let's see. Okay, so risk taking in general, I think is really important. Otherwise, you don't go anywhere. You'll just stay in the same place if you don't take any risk. At the same time, you have to be smart about what risks you take or what issues or topics and what the consequences can be. So the greater the consequences of the risk, the more cautious you need to be, and maybe you take smaller steps to test the waters before you make that big leap. So one of the things I learned when I went through a different leadership program, the Mid-Year Fellowship program, is the program is called Smallify, and it's about making sure that you take action and you make the action as small as it needs to be so that you're comfortable taking the risk. But the main point is you don't just stall because you're trying to plan things perfectly. You bring it to, what is the thing I can do tomorrow? And let's just take that step. And once you take that step, it'll lead to the next step. And you're going to learn something every time you take a step. And every time you learn something, you're reducing the risk going forward. Risks I've taken, I think all the things I talked about where I went into a job and I didn't know the job, those are risks. And, I made mistakes, but I had, I think, the right scaffolding around me when I made those mistakes. And I think those mistakes are probably some of the biggest gifts that I have.
Thank you.
So you're not an engineer, but you have like an analytical background. Can you tell us a bit about how that helped you to transition throughout your career at Hawaiian Electric, which is a company known for many of its engineers?
Yeah. So, I mean, the one thing I said is surrounding yourself with good people. So I'm surrounded by many good engineers, which is really important. I think my background leads me to have a lot of skills in critical thinking. So even though I don't understand to the degree everybody else, all of you understand engineering, I understand it enough to figure out what are the critical questions that need to be asked and the critical issues that need to be addressed to achieve the bigger outcomes that we're looking for. And then the smart people around me make sure that there's nothing they know what I'm trying to achieve and they ensure that nothing's being missed in the execution and the assessment of the path we're gonna take.
Being that you're taking on so many challenges in like a professional life and stuff, how do you maintain like and they said there's not, it's all just life, but do you have any like hobbies outside of that? And what do you do to like unwind and take your mind off of things?
I really love being out in nature, whether it's hiking or being in the ocean, that really helps me release my stress. I don't always get there. So sometimes it's just putting my, AirPods in and listening to music. And that helps me de-stress is when I just sit on my deck and I listen to music, and that helps center me. I think also talking to my kids and my husband also centers me. I always feel like when I talk to my kids, and my husband, it gets me back to what's most important.
You talk a lot about having a good culture, having your purpose drive. How do you facilitate that in a big company like Hawaiian Electric? How do you make sure that your goals are always aligning with everyone else?
Good question. I think I've been fortunate because when I was at HEI, I had a strategy position and we went through a process to reset the strategy for HEI at the holding company level, where we reset a new mission and I was helping to draft that. And so already some of the things that were in the new mission were already aligned with the things that I thought was important. And then when we were doing strategy at Hawaiian Electric Company, again, I was part of the process. And so I was able to provide my input on the things that I thought were critically important and that aligned with what I feel like my purpose is. And it has been embedded into what we call our declaration and our work going
forward. You talked a lot about having like a mentor and the importance of it. What kind of advice would you give to students or just anyone who would want to find one? Like, how can you find like the best one for you? And would it have to be in something in like your profession, or can it be like outside?
Definitely can be outside. I think it's whoever you feel like you have a good chemistry with. Well, let me take that back. I think there's different kinds of mentors. I think that, I've had many, many mentors. If you define mentors by people who give you really good advice, maybe not like my lifelong mentor, which I have a few of those, but I've had many people give me really good advice along the way. And it's just about honoring their experience and what they have to offer and just asking the questions. And I think most people are more than happy to share with you, no matter what industry they're in. I feel lucky that I have mentors that have really been there with me throughout and that I can call anytime at any point in my career. And I think that's where, I started the discussion with trust and credibility and values and purpose. I think for those people, there's a lot of alignment in those things. And so that helps create a really strong foundation for a longer term mentoring relationship.
So a lot of us,
I just wanted to, I took a leadership class a couple years, 10 years. But one thing that really stuck with me was this book called Failing Forward.
Yeah.
Wondered if, you've had any failures that you were able to maneuver into
Yeah.
progress.
Maneuver into progress. Honestly, I think all the failures maneuver into progress. I'm trying to think of one. I mean, the one that I think has that stands out for me, maybe because it's a little traumatic, was a very long time ago. We had done a big debt issuance. I forgot how much it was. It was probably like $80 million or $100 million. And the sale had been done, the cash is being transferred into our company. We had to take that cash and pay off our commercial paper, our short-term debt. We're taking in long-term debt, paying off our short-term debt. But there's a lot of cash transitions that had to happen. We were like a couple hours off on the cash transition. So we had to pay off the commercial paper before the cash came in. And luckily, everything worked out. But I was a young mom at the time. I had been working long hours and I had made a commitment to be on my daughter's field trip. And so thinking that everything was set already and that, it was all going to happen, I was out on the field trip with my daughter for preschool, and that started blowing up. And so I definitely learned my lesson in that process, not to just assume that, someone else has already figured it out and taken care of it, and really mapping out every single part of that process and making sure everybody has their roles and responsibilities is, I think, as critical as that. I've never made that mistake again.
I wanted to ask, how would you describe your own leadership style, and has it changed from when you first started being a leader to kind of where you are now?
Yeah, I think for sure. I think you always are growing as a leader. When I first started out in my career, and even probably when I first went to Hawaiian Electric as a vice president, I hated talking in front of other people. I mean, I don't love it today, but I couldn't. Brennan knows, like Brennan would go up and talk so easily, and I'd be like, Brennan, how do you do that? You just like go and you talk. He's like, I don't know, I just do it. Yeah, I'm a little bit, but maybe not enough. And so I think just with doing it more often, I got more used to it, and just getting more comfortable in my skin, that helps as well. And just the experiences you get over time, I think just evolves you as a leader in general. Yes.
With the dramatic changes in electrical distribution systems around the world and the way they build and the way they provide service and have to deal with customers with their own power sources now, so forth. How do you see the future coming? This is not about a leadership question. I guess this is an electrical energy question. How do you see the future coming where we have the haves and the have-nots, where people who live in high-rise buildings can't put solar in, et cetera? How's that all going to work out? Because I used to work in the industry, and EPRI, I used to get their circulars, and they were predicting these problems back in the early 1990s about how's this ever going to work out, And so, what do you see for the future? I mean, 100-day metering and so forth, which has been going on in Europe for the last 50 years, right? How's that all going to work out?
We have a pilot
How much do you have to know about how it's going to work out as an accountant or a CEO rather than an engineer who's going to plan all this?
Well, it's critically important. This issue came to the forefront in 2014 when I first moved to Hawaiian Electric Company. And people were talking about, well, what is the utility of the future with all of this distributed generation happening? And I and others, but I was personally very concerned about the equity issues of rooftop solar and how that was going to start affecting those that couldn't afford it. So as a state, we've made a lot of progress to create more equity around that through adjusting the economic incentives. And we continue to evolve that, so it's less cost shifting between those that have solar and those that don't. And there's many more programs now that help those that can't afford to buy solar outright to get solar. But as you create the tariffs through the PUC and the regulatory structure to ensure that the value given and the value received is equal to the dollars being exchanged, then those that don't have solar are going to benefit just as much as those that do have solar as a system. And that's the goal. For me, that would be the goal longer term, because we're trying to move our entire society to clean energy, not just some people to clean energy. And we need the entire system to work together. Those that have rooftop solar, all of the utility scale resources on our grid, and making sure that that comes together in a way both operationally and transactionally so that it's fair for everybody. And that's what we're all trying to figure out. But we're getting closer.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
One last question.
I was gonna ask if you have a procedure of how you handle adversity when your values or credibility don't align with a colleague, boss, or
When it doesn't align with what?
so, like if your values or you don't have your trust isn't aligning with one of your bosses or colleagues or employees,
Yeah.
what's the procedure that you take to handle that situation?
I think it's really important to share your concern and to be open about it. And, you know, I talked about candor with kindness. So I think they're delicate conversations, but it's important to have the conversations, especially if you feel like it doesn't align with your values. And sometimes it's just understanding the bigger picture, because earlier in my career, I may only understand one piece of it, but when you expand your aperture to understand the secondary implications, the tertiary implications, you say, okay, I better understand why that decision is being made and the trade-offs are being made, because maybe I only saw one side of the trade-off. If it's a situation where I still don't agree, I mean, sometimes you have, if it's not your call, if you're not in a position where it's not your call, you're gonna have to live with it, but at least you're voicing what your opinion is, so that my opinion is that over time, it starts to evolve and it starts to change. And then then you're in a position eventually where you're making the decisions. Yeah, very good question.
Thank you, Shelee. So hopefully, I mean, I'm sure you've come to realize why Shelee, number one, is one of my favorite people in this place, and then two, why she's got the kind of respect and trust that people have in her, and why she's been in the various positions that she has, because I learn from her all the time. And so working with her was just a privilege for me. So again, thank you. Joining in. And as always, we appreciate Ken and Donna Hayashida and Daryl Hana for sponsoring our leadership seminar series. Please join us next month, November 1st, where our next guest is Sutanto Wijaja, who'll be speaking a little bit more on the entrepreneurial side. So again, not another engineer, but just someone else who's going to be providing a very different view and perspective to our young future leaders as well. So thank you again for joining us today. Have a great weekend, and appreciate seeing you next month.